Lance Armstrong is one of the greatest athletes the world has ever seen, winning an incredible 7 consecutive Tour de France titles before his retirement. But for years, his achievements have been marred by whispers that he was a drug cheat. Well, they're whispers no more. Earlier this year, the US anti-doping agency charged Armstrong with using drugs, banned him for life and stripped his 7 Tour titles, even though Armstrong has strenuously maintained his innocence. The ban was partly based on testimony from Armstrong's teammates, among them Tyler Hamilton. He's just written a book called The Secret Race, which documents his own doping and cheating and blows the whistle on Armstrong too. Tyler Hamilton joined me from New York. Tyler Hamilton, was it possible to succeed in your era without doping?
You know, if you wanted to compete in my era, you needed to dope. You needed to dope. It's unfortunate, it's sad to say, and hopefully that isn't the case today. But back then, you know, you could ride in the middle of a peloton without doping, you know, and be a peloton fill or pack fill as they called it. Maybe finish in the back of the group, but it was, you know, hard to. I found it almost impossible to compete clean.
When did you discover that somebody as prominent as Lance Armstrong was cheating?
The first time Lance and I talked about it was in 1998. We became teammates in '98, and we talked about doping then. The first time I saw him dope was in '99. You know, I saw him dope in the year 2000. We were teammates through 2001, and then we were competitors after that.
Give me an example of the sorts of things that you and Lance Armstrong and others were doing.
We were taking EPO, which helps boost your hematocrit and hemoglobin. We took testosterone. Those were the big things, you know. The big thing was EPO. Then in the year 2000, I blood doped for the first time with Lance Armstrong and a teammate.
What do EPO and blood doping actually do in terms of your performance?
Yeah, basically it increases your hematocrit, hemoglobin. Basically you can breathe better. You have more red blood cells which carry oxygen to the muscle. So, you know, the better you can breathe, the faster you can ride. How
did you all avoid detection?
A lot of different ways. One way was, you know, the team doctors would tell you, you know, what and how much of a certain product you could take and how many days the testers could still detect it for, which, you know, I called in the book like the glow time, you know, how long you were glowing. So with each product you had a different glow time, and depending on how much you took. And, you know, that you had very sophisticated teams with sophisticated doctors, and, you know, if you followed their rules, you would pass the controls. You know, I passed several hundred controls over my career.
Lance Armstrong has denied cheating and pointed out that he passed scores of drug tests during his career. He says his accusers are people who are lying out of spite or for personal gain. What do you say to that?
Well, you know, if I passed several hundred controls, and if I retired in, you know, July of 2004, I would have been a clean rider, or known as a clean rider too, but, you know, I wasn't. I was far from it.
Are there records that back up what you say? Is it simply your word against his, or is it bigger than that?
It's much bigger than that, and I understand the denial, you know, because I denied it for, what, 6, 7 years. It's kind of your first reaction, and you know, it's difficult to tell the truth, but I can tell you that it feels good. You know, I kept this secret for way too long. You know, I lied to my parents, to my brother, my sister, my friends, coworkers, and you know, enough was enough. It took its toll. It was very difficult to hold in, and, you know, I was prepared to take it to the grave. But fortunately, I was pulled in to testify in a federal case, and that was my you know, that was lucky for me. And it sounds kind of funny to say.
You say you'd kept it a secret for a long time. What made you decide to speak out and cooperate?
I was called by a federal investigator by the name of Jeff Novinsky, and forced to, basically I went in front of the grand jury and told the whole truth. You know, if not, it's a criminal. If you don't tell the truth, you can go to prison. So again, I went in kicking and screaming, You know, didn't want to break the code of silence. And I answered their questions, and I started by, the information was kind of trickling out, the truths were trickling out, and then after about 15 minutes, you know, it just poured out of me, and it felt so good. Little did I know, it felt great. I was dreading it, but it felt fantastic. And from that day on, that was about 2 years ago, I knew the right thing to do was just tell the truth and the whole truth. And
what do you think about Lance Armstrong taking the martyr's approach and saying he can't be bothered to fight doping allegations anymore?
I mean, from his side, I understand their strategy, because I don't think it would be a good idea to fight this in court. You know, I'm only one of the witnesses. You know, there's up to 15 or 20 other witnesses similar to me that have the same stories, and I think it would really be an ugly, ugly situation. I think it would be a slow and very painful few weeks of rider and staff testimony. But I would like him to someday, you know, come clean and tell the truth, because I think I know how hard it is to hold in these lies, and I feel like I can't imagine that it's easy to be in his shoes today.
Is it possible that he and some others legitimately feel like it wasn't cheating because everybody was doing it?
Yeah, I mean, there was one time, a point in my career when I felt the same way. Looking back now, you know, it's clear as day that, you know, that's not the case.
There are so many cycling fans around the world. Can we trust now that the sport is clean?
I do know it's a lot cleaner, which is very encouraging. I know all the doping controls are getting better and better, and there's a lot more cooperation between the riders and the anti-doping associations. But from what I hear, it's still not clean. But much better, which is encouraging.
Tyler Hamilton, thank you very much for talking to us.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I appreciate it, and hope to speak to you again. Take care.